Study Section 4, Contemporary Social Problems. Introduction. As you can see, we have explained somewhere in this course that social interactions and the processes that bring them about were fundamental aspects of every human society. In addition to making it possible for people to relate with, compete against, and benefit from one another, social interactions also create changes and conditions that cause social disorder, or what is popularly known as social problems in sociology. Social problems are important themes in sociology, and you will, as a matter of fact, be right to say that the discipline owes its emergence and continued relevance in contemporary time to the study of social problems. In the current study section, we shall explain what it means for an issue or social reality to be considered a social problem. We will describe some of the most distinguished attributes that give a problem a social status as different from natural, personal, or private problems. Also, to be covered in these study sections are the processes or stages in the life cycle of social problems, their causes, and brief explanation on some social problems in contemporary Nigerian society. Learning outcome for study section 4. When you have studied this section, you should be able to define what social problems are and mention examples of issues that are considered to be social problems in contemporary societies. Describe the nature and characteristics of social problems. List and explain the stages in the life cycle of social problems. State some of the factors that cause social problems in most societies. Explain why unemployment, poverty, corruption, and religion crisis are believed to be social problems in contemporary Nigerian society. Definition and nature of social problems. Although social problems are hard to define in a single, generally acceptable manner, they are peculiarly unique problems that, if uncontrolled or eradicated, can destroy valued societal norms, cause serious breakdown of law and order, lead to revolution, or bring about the demise of nations. As such, one of the ways that social problems have been defined was that they are problems that emerge from social interactions caused by strains in social systems and which threaten the realization of societal norms or values. Adenuga, 2009. Social problems may also be described as problems which a large segment of the society perceive as creating undesirable difference between socially prescribed norms or ideas and social realities. In other words, a problem must be perceptibly by a significant number of the people as threatening to social structures and the fundamental principles and norms of relationships before it is considered social. Let's consider how prostitution within the Nigerian context can clarify the context or the definitions of social problems above. When sex is changed for money in Nigeria, an act that the prostituting parties see as a form of economic transaction, the norms that prohibit non-conjugal and indiscriminate sexual relations are threatened. Not only will this pattern of sexual relation lead to the collapse of valued norms, commercialized sex also leads to the spread of non-curable diseases, causing deaths and economic losses. Similarly, the act of self-murder or suicide, a social action that has been erroneously interpreted as a deeply personal or private matter becomes a social problem was shown or believed to have been caused by some lack of integration in the social system. You can now say that social problems are unlike other problems that occur in human societies. Social problems emerge from and affect social relations, and the extent to which they disturb public order is what gives them that status. Social problems also have time and location dynamics. With regards to time, different historical periods usually have their own set of social problems, and some of the issues that were not perceived as problems at a certain time in the past are now considered serious social problems. In Nigeria, for instance, kidnapping and cultism were not serious social problems in the 1960s. By the 1990s, however, cultism in Nigeria's tertiary institutions was rampant, while kidnappings did not gain prominence until the 2000s. Today, these two are some of the most popular social problems facing members of the Nigerian society. Relatedly, social problems have location dynamics, lived experiences of members of society. A differs from what members of society B experience. For example, while racism is not a social problem in Nigeria, the same cannot be said of South Africa, where the bits and pieces of past social relations continues to affect ethnic relations more than 18 years the former end of apartheid rule. In other words, what constitutes social problems differs from society to society. Having said this, we must be careful not to confuse social problems with natural problems. One obvious difference between natural and social problems is that the cause of the former is usually beyond the control of human beings, while the latter are almost always man-made. For instance, while earthquakes, flooding, tsunamis, famine, and other natural disasters were caused by some imbalances in the physical environment, corruption, prostitution, poverty, unemployment, cultism, child trafficking, student unrest, armed robbery, and so on are social problems because their causes lay in social interaction, and they are mostly solvable through human effort. Based on all that have been said so far, we should be able to highlight the most important conditions that a problem must meet before we call it a social problem. These conditions include that the problem must be perceived to be a social problem by the public. In studying the phenomenon of baby dumping in Nigeria, one of the questions that may be asked is whether the respondents think it was a problem. If the public did not feel that a particular social reality was a problem, we cannot take it as one. Such problem must create an undesirable gap between social ideas and reality. We know that societies value human life, and norms that protect its sanctity are usually instituted to ensure that life is treated with respect. So when groups randomly take lives, as in the case of Boko Haram in northern Nigeria, or when people are publicly executed without trial, as in the now popular case of Alufo in Rivers State, many are most likely to feel that these killings create unfavorable gap between social ideal and societal reality. It must be solvable through collective action. Since social problems are man-made, collaborative actions among people must be able to solve them. For instance, the federal government would not have established the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) if it believed that corruption was a natural occurrence. The problem should have some effects on a large percentage of the population. Many social problems around us have direct and indirect effects on us. Even a seemingly minority problem like kidnapping in the Niger Delta region is in fact a problem for the entire Nigerian society, since it impacts national revenue and cause serious damage to the image of the country at the international level. So when a problem is tagged a social problem, you must ask yourself whether that problem affects a large percentage of the population. Before going on to the next section, it must be mentioned that beside the conditions, there are a number of groups involved in determining if, when, and how an issue becomes a social problem. Depending on the nature of the problem, the time when the problem surfaces and those it affected, groups such as the media, government agents and agencies, social advocacies, religious leaders, custodians of culture, elites, and other influential or powerful actors can be determinants of what issue may or may not be elevated to the status of a social problem. In fact, issues that many people do not take seriously or considered consequential may suddenly, once powerful groups like the national legislators formulate policy for or against it. An example of this is the issue of same-sex marriage that assumed the status of social problem once a member of the National Assembly of Nigeria proposed a strong law against gay marriage. Causes of social problems in the society. The occurrence of social problems within any society is mostly due to multiple causes, according to Adenugba 2009. These causes include, but not limited to, the following. 1. Chaos. Chaotic situation is in itself a form of disorder and therefore not only a cause of social problem but also the effect of it. Chaotic situations can come in many forms, from lack of proper guidance due to the absence of father figure in the household to cultural conflicts that bring about a breakdown of rules and regulations. 2. Defiance and misbehavior. Defiance occurs when some members of the society fail to live in accordance with existing norms of behavior. Defiant acts or misbehavior has a tendency to cause tensions in social structure. For example, armed robbery is considered a misbehavior in most societies since the act deviates from valued social norms that prohibit unlawful and forced dispossession. That is to say that people are normally expected to give up their personal properties out of free will, but it is a free will that is usually taken away forcefully whenever armed robbery takes place. This effectively makes armed robbery a social problem since the normal way of behaving has been deviated from. 3. Sociocultural, political, and demographic changes. Sudden changes within the society can also contribute to the emergence of social problems. These changes can be political, such as when new laws are passed; sociocultural, as in when there is intensification of Western mode of living in African societies; or even demographic, such as when a society experiences a rapid increase in the movement of people from rural areas into urban centers. For instance, there is a level in which we can claim for certain that the exposure of Nigerian youth to material culture, as popularized in Western media, played a great role in the spread of Yahoo Yahoo. In the same vein, a surge in the number of people living in the cities at any particular point in time can lead to widespread poverty and unemployment. Likewise, policy change in traffic law that prohibits Okada or commercial motorbike riding in a highly populated city may not only render people jobless but also create a pool of lawbreakers or those who may choose to survive and meet ends through socially prescribed means. Number 4. Social conflicts. Again, interclass or group conflict can also cause social problems in the society. When there exists in any human setting some conditions of inequality between upper or majority and lower or minority groups, the likelihood of serious problems coming up can be high. Take terrorism and militancy as quick examples. When groups take up arms against the government, social inequality and injustice were often cited as their primary motivation for doing so. Also, in the first half of the 20th century, unequal race relation was said to be the main factor that intensified the prevalence of poverty among the blacks and other minority groups in the United States. Stages in the life cycle social problems. Social problems go through is known as cycle, that is, the series of processes that takes place from the point of discovery of a problem to when it is eventually eradicated. According to Albert Blumer, 1997, cited in Adenugba 2009, there are 5 evolutionary processes or stages in the life cycle of social problems. Discovery stage. This is the first in the series of stages that a social problem goes through. The problem gets discovered at this point, the point when the people notice the existence of the problem for the first time. Confirmation stage. At this stage, the reality and the extent of the problem would be ascertained. The society confirms that the problem is actually a social problem and not a mere personal problem or natural problem that may not be due to human creation. Prevention stage. Here, steps are taken to halt the spread of the problem. The society usually embarks on advocacy to bring the problem to the awareness of other members of the public in a bid to prevent its spread. Eradication stage. The society drops up plans to eradicate the problem. Such plans would incorporate strategies to be adopted and they highlight and secure the needed resources to effectively deal with the social problem. Implementation stage. This is the 5th and the last stage in Blumer's framework and the life cycle of social problems. The strategies that have been mapped out in the earlier phase will be set in motion at this time. The goal is mainly to solve the problem through collective action. Some social problems in contemporary Nigeria. There is no society without our own set of social problems, and this fact applies to Nigeria as well. In recent times, some of the issues that assumed the status of social problems in Nigeria included terrorism, armed robbery, bribery and corruption, poverty, extrajudicial killings, kidnapping, fraud, religious crisis, and unemployment, to mention but a few. Nigerian newspapers, television, radio stations, and dedicated web and social media sites are filled with reports of crimes and mass impoverishment on daily basis, a reality that is indicative of the fact that social problems are widespread in contemporary Nigerian society. Considering amount and scale of the social problems in the country, we shall take a brief look at only 4 in this studies section. 1. Unemployment. In general terms, unemployment refers to the situation of lack of job or income-generating activity to support oneself or one's family, usually over a sustained period of time. This is one problem that affects the different segments of the population in a differently, and it is one of the greatest challenge confronting the government of Nigeria in the 21st century. According to the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) 2012, unemployment rate in Nigeria stood at 23.90% in 2011, a marked increase from 2009, 19.7%, and 2010, 21.1%. A recent survey showed that an average of 1.8 million new entrants came joined the labor force annually from 2007 to 2011, NBS 2012. The striking figure accounted for only those that entered the national workforce after graduation from universities, polytechnics, and college of education, and did not include secondary school dropouts. Given the size of new entrants into the labor force and the small number of available jobs, it is therefore not surprising that unemployment is considered a social problem in Nigeria. Many factors combine to create this situation, but the most significant of them are poor economic growth, low investment in high employment generating enterprises, poor entrepreneur education for youths, and poor access of existing entrepreneurs to credit facility. Another cause of unemployment is the growing disinterest of youths in highly labor-intensive work such as farming and factory work, a situation that has over the years been worsened by declining investment in the two sectors by both private and public enterprises. Meanwhile, the continued failure of national, state and private training institutions to equip students with new and relevant skills has remained a factor in the challenge being faced by Nigeria in the area of unemployment. As a social problem in contemporary Nigeria, unemployment has been the source of multiple imbalances in the country, and its consequences for social order continues to worry many. National unemployment rate 2011: national 23.90%, rural 25.60%, urban 17.10%, male 23.50%, female 24.30%. National Bureau of Statistics 2012. Amongst other things, unemployment elongates the duration of poverty in poor households. This is often the case in homes that committed the entire family resources into the education of children with the hope of higher returns in the near future. Not only with lack of job opportunities cause suffering within the household, it puts pressures on the children to succeed at all costs. It is therefore not surprising to find graduates becoming armed robbers, executive beggars, and prostitutes. Furthermore, unemployment can spur violent protests, militancy, and destabilize the social system. In fact, this view has played out in the Niger Delta for more than a decade, with kidnapping and murders becoming a tool in the hand of dissatisfied youths. With the projected rise of the workforce by 2050, we can be sure that unemployment will cause serious damage to the Nigerian society unless something drastic is done. 2. Poverty. Poverty has many dimensions and it can mean different things to different people. Nevertheless, the reality of poverty is felt by every poor person as lack of basic necessities of life, especially food, shelter, and income. Scholars have also included lack of education, vulnerability, and lack of opportunities as aspects of poverty. Over the last couple of decades, the widely used measurements of poverty are the one per day and purchasing power parity (PPP) measures. Poverty is a social problem in Nigeria for many reasons. First, close to 70% of the country's over 163 million people are living in poverty in 2012, a condition that had worsened 1980s when poverty incidence was estimated at 27.2%. Given this scenario, it is hard to imagine how social, economic, and political development may be achieved in due time. Second, there are strong evidences to support the fact that poverty is a source of other problems confronting the Nigerian population, including poor health, malnutrition, infants and maternal mortality, high illiteracy level, high prevalence of HIV/AIDS, poor political participation, rise of slum in urban centers, environmental damages, child labor, food crisis, and increase in marginal occupations such as begging, street hawking, child trafficking, and so on. Third, and finally, poverty in Nigeria is unequally distributed, with more people impoverished people in the north than in the south of the country, while more rural residents live in poverty than those in urban centers. This made poverty in Nigeria a highly politicized issue. Today, many scholars are beginning to suggesting that the continued existence a unified Nigeria will perhaps be determined by what is achieved in poverty reduction in the coming years. You can therefore see that poverty is a serious social problem that must be tackled in time if destructive social disorder is prevented. 3. Corruption. Corruption has many faces, sometimes manifesting as bribery, cronyism, financial and election fraud, forgery, money laundering, embezzlement, nepotism, etc. Nigerians often pay before files are signed, and they grease elbows to have contract papers forwarded to the right officers, while government officials sit on promising projects and award contracts to unqualified friends and associates. In recent times, large-scale pension fraud and subsidies scam were exposed respectively as office of the head of civil service of the Federation and in the oil industry. Before this, countless national leaders were either accused or investigated or jailed for corruption-related offenses. According to the Corruption Perception Index (CPI), an annual internationally renowned publication of the Transparency International ranks countries on a scale of 0, very corrupt, to 10, very clean, using different corruptions parameters. Nigeria ranked 143 out of 182 countries in 2011. By this standard, Nigeria is one of the few most corrupt nations in the world. In fact, the country is yet to score above 2.7 since the CPI was instituted in 1995. This is probably the reason why some scholars think that a culture of corruption exists in Nigeria. Corruption is a product of many factors and cannot be explained by considering a single factor. Some of these factors are personal greed and avarice, strong aversion for hard work, breakdown of norms and the legal system, gift-giving culture that blurs the line between genuine appreciation and unholy incentive, poverty, poor condition of service, etc. As another problem with a status of social problem in Nigeria, corruption promotes inefficiency in public and private sectors and leads to waste of national resources. When a police officer collects bribe and extorts helpless citizens who cannot defend themselves, the police, as an important institution of social control, loses credibility, and this may further lead to public distrust and generalized apathy. Corruption also destroys lives, since it aids the diversion of monies needed to provide social service into private pockets. 4. Religion crisis. We have noted somewhere in this course guide that Nigeria is diverse in many respects, particularly in our environmental, ethnic, cultural, linguistics, and religious makeup. While diversity is ordinarily expected to be a source of strength, unity, and progress, the existence of different religions in Nigeria has caused intolerance, violence, conflicts, maiming, and destruction of properties, and deaths of millions since independence. Interestingly, a poll by Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life revealed that 92% of the Nigerians, mainly Muslims and Christians, pray to God on a daily basis. Over the last few decades, several small to large-scale conflicts were recorded in states like Kaduna, Jos, Kano, Lagos, Bauchi, Borno, and Sokoto, while Adamawa and Yola featured as additional hotspots for religious fundamentalism in recent past. In all of these places, adherents of Islam and Christianity fought over issues that sometimes have ethno-linguistic undertone, because both religions prohibit unlawful killings and encourage tolerance and peaceful coexistence. It has been argued that the crisis being experienced in the religious sphere was due in part to issues of land rights, social justice, poverty, unemployment, and so on. Like all other types of social crises, religious crisis can cause irreconcilable divide between the people of a society. The constant tension that pervades in religiously intolerant society may create a situation in which all issues of national concern are permanently compartmentalized between religiously lights and cause difficulty in reaching consensus on matters that have been direct impacts on unity and national survival. It is therefore important that this problem is solved in time to avert total disintegration. Given the character of the four problems that we have called social in contemporary Nigeria, identify at least two others, describe the problems, and suggest ways of dealing with them. Other problems that can be identified are prostitution, child labor, women disempowerment, etc. Tackling social problems in Nigeria. At all levels of government, efforts have been devoted to tackling social problems in Nigeria, with particular reference to the problems that we have examined so far. Myriads of policies and programs were implemented at different times to deal with unemployment, poverty, corruption, and religious crisis. In the area of unemployment, the National Directorate of Employment (NDE) was established by the federal government, gathered data on employment for use in employment planning, and provided training opportunities for unskilled youth, while at the same time supporting promising entrepreneurs with credit to grow small businesses. State-level programs have also surfaced in many regions across the country. Examples of this in the Southwest include the youth empowerment schemes in Osun and Oyo states, literacy and vocational training centers in Lagos, etc. Because poverty has many dimensions, it has been confronted with multiple strategies, starting with the National Development Program (NDP), the Agricultural Development Programs (ADPS), Integrated Rural Development Programs, Green Revolution, Better Life for Rural Women, National Poverty Eradication Program, National or State Economic Empowerment and Development Strategy (N or SEED), the Millennium Development Goals (MDGs), and now Vision 2020. Corruption on its part also received and continues to receive serious attention. Besides the anti-corruption policies of military and civilian administrations in the past decades. The creation of the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, an independent corruption practices commission, and other offenses were the most comprehensive attempts to tackle corruption in recent history. This organization have charged, prosecuted, and secured convictions of fraud and malpractices against politicians and bigwigs in Nigeria, some of which led to the discovery of stolen funds in international financial institutions. In the same vein, religious organizations have been at the forefront of the struggle for the promotion of more tolerant societies. In fact, the increasing threat posed to the security of lives and properties by Boko Haram in the northern part of the country seems to have heightened the involvement of Muslim clerics in the peace process as they continue to distance themselves from the vision of the group. On the Christian side, the Christian Association of Nigeria (CAN) has been most vocal in speaking for peace and tolerance, while government set up investigative committees to ascertain the causes of violence and propose recommendations for the eradication of future occurrences. Unfortunately, these efforts are yet to produce the desired results. A ridiculously high percentage of the country's labor force is still out of the job, most of them youth and fresh graduates. Waste, mismanagement, misgovernment, inefficiency, poor economic growth, and lack of social amenities and infrastructure. Poor economic growth and lack of social amenities and infrastructural underdevelopment have rendered poverty reduction strategies ineffective. At the same time, lack of political will and of sustained and tireless dialogue continues to hamper serious progress in the war against corruption and religious intolerance. As students of sociology, part of our assignments is to begin to imagine how these problems can be confronted in a bid to involve a peaceful and progressive society. From the course of this study, identify some of the causes of social problems in Nigeria: bad leadership, high rates of unemployment, economic recession, high rates of poverty. Summary for study section 4. So far, we have endeavored to explain different aspects of what is known as social problems in sociology. We have learned that social problems are a unique set of problems that can destroy value societal norms, cause serious breakdown of law and order, lead to revolution, or bring about the demise of nations. As such, social problems are problems that emerge from social interactions caused by strains in social system and which threaten the realization of societal norms. Social problems are not personal or natural problems, and for any problem to assume the status of social, it must have thought to be so by a significantly large percentage of the population and must be believed to have created an undesirable difference between social ideal and social reality. What we call social problems can be caused by chaotic situations, deviance, and misbehavior, social, cultural, political, and demographic changes, as well as social conflicts. Social problems go through 5 stages or phases: discovery, confirmation, prevention, eradication, and implementation stages. All societies face problems, and Nigeria is not an exception, with unemployment, poverty, corruption, and religion crisis being few of the most important at this time of the country's existence. End of study section 4. Thanks for listening.